And yet tonight we'll drift further south along the Nile, where the river widens and the deserts grow quiet, where queens of ancient Nubia spoke softly and ruled wisely. I'm speaking to you, yes, you with the tired eyes, because you've carried a long day on your shoulders. Let me lift it for a while. Breathe in, breathe out. We will listen to the hush of reed beds, the clink of beads, the rustle of palm leaves, and the measured grace of women who shaped peace with gifts. When you're ready, close your eyes and come to Meroë. You, with the long day still clinging to your shoulders, come closer to the lamplight. The Nile moves like a sleepy creature outside the palace wall, and inside, a woman in a lotus-crowned diadem lowers her eyes to a wooden board covered in marks. She is the Kandake, Queen of Kush, ruler of Meroë, and tonight she does not raise a spear or a shout, she raises a reed pen. Her power travels not in chariots, but in parcels, not in alarms, but in silk-wrapped secrets. On the ledger are words for simple things: date honey cakes, bronze mirrors, ivory bangles, blue lotus perfume, yet each word carries the weight of a border, the shape of a promise. She speaks so softly that only the scribe hears. A granary key for the northern temple, a basket of gum arabic for the priest's scratchy throat, a miniature reed boat for the child of a fretful envoy. Gifts that move like water around stone, easing sharpness, rounding corners. Outside, a night heron steps through the reeds, and somewhere a potter's kiln cools with a faint crackle. The queen's bracelets hardly whisper as she turns the board and adds a final line. No gold without grain returned, no silk without safe passage. The Nile lifts and settles as if in answer. You are seen here. Your breathing has slowed. The Kandake notices the hush settle on the room, the way dew settles on palm fronds. She is steering, but the hands on the rudder are clothed in linen. Tomorrow a caravan will move because she moved a line of ink tonight. She signs with the lotus seal, and the wax takes her imprint like the river accepts the moon, without ripple, without argument, and with quiet authority. By dawn, the courtyards breathe cool shade. A young princess moves carefully between columns painted with blue lotus and gold stars. You can hear her sandals whisper against swept sandstone. She will inherit a throne that listens before it speaks. So today, she learns temple etiquette, that quiet architecture of power. The high priest shows her how to bow without shrinking, how to present a basket of dates, so the gesture is both gift and greeting. He speaks of Amun's patience, of the way the god answers in seasons, not sentences. The princess watches attendants wrap perfume cloths around sacred vessels. She learns the names of each cloth as one might learn constellations. The lesson is not about incense alone. It is about signaling. How one jar of myrrh left open in the side chapel tells envoys to relax their tariffs. How a closed jar means the negotiations must wait for sunrise and cool heads. The princess memorizes the unspoken language of gifts, the grammar of bowls and braziers, of ribbons and knots. You are invited to breathe in the temple's resinous air. A beam of light lifts dust like golden fish in a river. When the river floods, the priest says, we do not command it back. We place the right stones, so its path nourishes us. The princess nods. She understands. Diplomacy is river work. They approach the bark of Amun, and she lays down a garland of flax. The garland says, without syllables, we wish to weave our days with yours. Outside, the ibis calls. Inside, the lesson ends with a small smile. The princess tucks a sprig of lotus into her braid, a soft flag of intention. In a low workshop the colour of baked bread, a beadmaker tends a kiln the size of a quiet drum. You feel the air warm your hands as he lifts a shard to test the glaze. Faience must be coaxed like a story. Too much fire and it screams into grey. Too little and it sulks dull. The queen has ordered necklaces in river colours for distant friends. Egypt to the north. Red Sea merchants to the east. The beadmaker smiles. He knows that color can be a treaty when words would bruise. He grinds quartz to powder with natron, humming a tune older than the titles on our tongues. Gold dust measured with a breath will halo the edges. The apprentice threads cooled beads onto palm fiber, counting not in tens, but in heartbeats. You are counted with them, a listener added to the string. Outside, camels kneel and rise. Inside, beads cool blue as shallow water. The beadmaker wraps one strand around a clay tag. For the child of the Egyptian envoy. Wear this on your first boat day. Gifts that tilt the world gently. When the kiln shuts its orange eye, silence lays down. The beadmaker touches a tray as if blessing each bright pebble. He tells the apprentice that faience remembers the last hands that held it, so hands must be calm. The apprentice slows his breathing, and the thread moves without tangles. A breeze carries the scent of gum arabic. A drum thuds once in the market. A goat sneezes and laughs at its own surprise. The tray is complete. Tomorrow the necklace will shine on a small neck, and a father will find his voice softer. A necklace, a nudge, a new canal through a hard bank. The court scribe sits beneath a tamarisk, a lapboard balanced on his knees. Meroitic signs flow like reeds in wind, curves for agreements, angles for caution. He composes a letter that will travel farther than most men. A catalogue of gifts offered and gifts expected, a map of respect. One granite mortar for your temple kitchen, he writes, and in return, safe escort for our barges past your watchman. He pauses over a word for pride. The queen will not bend where bending breaks bones. He sharpens his reed with a quiet click and chooses another phrase. Friendship like the river, broad, nourishing, and patient with stones. The scribe includes a small joke, a bit of shade for the heat of policy. We trust your guards prefer dates to disputes. He smiles to himself. Jokes are gifts too, wrapped in ink. A boy arrives with a bowl of fig halves and cool water. The scribe eats slowly, letting sweetness remind him of tone. Letters should taste like what they hope to grow. You hear the dry brush of pen on papyrus, the little cough of a dove. When the letter is done, he ties it with palm fiber, adds a lotus seal, and places a faience bead in the knot. Small color, big meaning. This comes from Meroë, where we make beauty from sand. He knows that words can tilt a patrolman's spear toward the sand instead of the sky. He looks to the palace and sees the queen at a window, quiet as a statue but warmer. He bows to no one in particular and sighs, satisfied. Tonight, the river will carry language the way it carries light, without struggle. At the river's first cataracts, rocks dapple the current like sleeping cattle. Caravans arrive by dust and leave by water, and at dusk everything pauses. You hear saddles sigh and ropes creak as camels kneel. The air smells of frankincense and cardamom, of leather warmed all day. The Queen's quartermaster meets the caravan master with a clasp that is more ceremony than grip. No banners, no trumpets, only measures and memory. They open a chest of myrrh, tears of trees that learn to talk to gods. Another chest holds carved ebony writing boards, smooth as midnight. Each gift has a job. Myrrh will quiet a priest's throat before he speaks in favor of a ferry. Ebony will steady a nervous treasurer's sums. The quartermaster notes that a giraffe will be led at dawn as a gentle spectacle. Not a boast, but a tall joke to soften wary eyes. The caravan master nods. Humor walks best at the front of a procession. You stand with them, breathing the day's last heat. A woman from the eastern merchants pours date wine the color of dusk into small cups. She whispers that along the incense routes, stories travel faster than carts, so keep the stories kind and the roads grow short. The quartermaster smiles and drafts a tiny rumor. The Queen has a new recipe for fig cakes that never crumble on boats. Traders love a recipe almost as much as silver. Torches bloom. Somewhere a child practices a reed flute, notes rising and falling like the river finding its night. The caravans settle. In the ledger, another line. Gifts ready, paths ready, hearts almost ready. Festival day arrives like a patient drum. The bark of Amun glides along the riverbank, a gold-tipped shrine on men's shoulders, swaying as if breathing. The Queen walks beside it, palms open, bracelets quiet. Gifts are staged like notes in a lullaby. Baskets of millet, jars of blue lotus perfume, a pair of bronze mirrors to catch sunlight and send it back as blessing. Envoys from the north watch with a mixture of calculation and comfort. The high priest intones a prayer that lands softly in the reeds. As incense sketches small clouds, the Queen directs a child attendant to pass a faint's bracelet to the youngest visiting page. The exchange is tiny and deliberate, a smile small enough to pass under a closed door. You can feel the mood tilt, the way a boat tilts when a single passenger moves to even the weight. After the bark rests beneath fig trees, the Queen speaks to the envoys about water levels, ferry rights, the safe hour for passing patrol rocks. No threats. Only a plate of date honey cakes, set where hands naturally find them. We know the river's tempers, she says, and we know yours are milder than hers. Laughter like the clink of bracelets. The old river accepts the new arrangement. The bark is lifted again. The procession resumes, slower than birds, faster than worry. You exhale. The festival teaches the treaty without a single clause carved in stone. Evening finds the envoy in a guest courtyard, open to stars. He unseals the bottle of blue lotus perfume that appeared on his sleeping mat, reads the note tied to its neck. For travel dreams, not travel worries. He smiles, because worry is the first thing he packs. The scent is cool as river shade, floral but not proud. He dabs a drop on each wrist and thinks of oars dipping in perfect rhythm. His aide catalogues the other presents. A palm fibre rope, woven strong but gentle on hands. A small ebony board for tallies. A packet of gum arabic for the cough that follows long speeches. The envoy realizes he has been heard, perhaps even seen, in his tiredness. Gifts are mirrors that speak softly. He looks toward the Queen's garden, where lamp glow threads the palm leaves. He decides that tomorrow he will ask not for more guards, but for fewer stairs, fewer obstacles, fewer chances for tempers to trip. You listen to the night with him. Crickets like distant looms, a jar settling with a tiny sigh, the wind making the same old promise to return. He breathes deeper than he intended. The lotus scent lifts and falls. A plan loosens. Reduce tolls for boats that carry temple oil. Increase the gift of river pilots for any who bring grain. He sleeps with the bottle under his pillow, as if the scent could teach his dreams to be diplomatic too. In some dreams, it can. Dawn pours soft gold through the eastern gate. A giraffe steps with dignified caution into the palace forecourt, led by two handlers who murmur as if carrying a bowl of water. Children gasp, then hush themselves. Even awe behaves politely here. The Queen approaches with a handful of acacia leaves and offers them without reaching. The giraffe lowers its head like a bow pulled by a warm wind. Laughter loosens knots. Behind the gentle spectacle, the real gift waits. An iron key the size of a hand, pressed into the envoy's palm. Access to our southern granary, the Queen says, for seasons when river clocks run slow. The envoy feels the weight of both gifts, the tall, smiling one with lashes like fans, and the small, heavy one that opens food. The giraffe will be spoken of at every table. The key will be remembered at the precise hour when a kitchen pot is almost empty. You watch handlers guide the animal through a shaded lane to a yard prepared with high fences and higher leaves. In the cool of a storage hall, the quartermaster shows the envoy the tall jars painted with symbols of seasons. "We trade more easily," the quartermaster says, "when everyone sleeps after supper." The envoy laughs. He pockets the key, as if tucking away a lullaby. The giraffe's hooves make a soft drum over packed earth. Its shadow brushes a wall painted with river reeds. A tall joke, a deep promise, the best pair for crossing a hard year. In the iron yard, bellows breathe like sleeping beasts. Charcoal glows. Sparks rise and fall like tiny comets losing their urgency. The smith draws a bloom from the furnace, a spongy heart of iron that will be hammered into calm. "War makes swords," he mutters, "but peace needs keys, hinges, and ploughshares." Today, per the Queen's list, he fashions door hooks that do not squeal, hinges that do not sulk, and sickle blades that cut generosity into fields. The envoy watches with interest that is almost boyish. He is used to bronze mirrors and ivory combs, but forged patience is new to him. The smith explains that a quiet hinge can save a treaty by preventing an ill-timed creak outside a council room. The envoy laughs and orders a dozen more. You feel the rhythm of hammer on anvil, steady as a heartbeat slowed for sleep. The Queen arrives, hair braided simply, wearing the dust of the yard without ceremony. She asks the smith to engrave lotus petals on the larger keys. "Beauty helps hands remember kindness," she says. He nods and scores the metal with his chisel. Each petal opens without effort. By afternoon, the yard is a parade of unglamorous wonders. Latches, blades, clamps and hooks. Gifts that make life gentler in a way that cannot be paraded, but will be praised in kitchens and granaries. The envoy chooses a hinge, swings it, and smiles when it moves like silk on water. "Send this to our northern ferry house," he says. A hinge travels, and with it, a quiet way of doing things. Midday heat presses even the flies to manners, so negotiations move to a courtyard, where ostrich plume fans stir slow breezes. On a woven mat, gifts lie like sentences waiting for verbs. A set of ivory hairpins carved with river birds, a mirror pair of bronze saucers, and a roll of linen scented faintly with cedar. The envoy names his needs gently, lighter tolls, fewer inspections, and the Queen replies with items rather than arguments. Hairpins for the inspector's wife, the saucers for the patrol leader's mother, cedar-scented linen for the scribe who coughs. Each item walks ahead of the words that follow it. You can feel the heat loosen its grip as shade deepens. The Queen places a final thing on the mat, a simple ivory comb with missing teeth that has been carefully smoothed. "For the guard captain who keeps what can be mended," she says. The envoy understands. Thrift honoured, not mocked. He offers in return a casket of natron for the temple laundries, cleanliness as diplomacy. They drink cool water from carnelian-rimmed cups. A fly lands and leaves without insult. Agreements collect like small shells in a basket. "We will write it later," the scribe says, "but we have written it now." The Queen smiles. Words will come, carved or inked. But today, shade and gifts have done the grammar. The letter that leaves Meroë at sunset is slender but sure. Its palm fibre knot carries a single faience bead like a quiet bell. Boatwomen lay it in a reed basket among dates and figs, the way you tuck a thought among pleasant memories so it travels safely. The message lists agreed courtesies. Pilots posted at cataract mouths, tolls reduced when boats carry temple oil, a granary key honoured without questions during lean months. As oars lick the river, the scribe tells a little story to the boat crew. Words are stones in a ford, place so feet do not slip. They nod. not because they need persuading, but because the river loves a metaphor. You feel the boat huddle into the current's shoulder. A girl adjusts her hair and touches the bead at the knot for luck. The letter feels that touch the way a dog feels a hand through fur. On the far bank, a watchman notes the steady rhythm of the oars and waves. He was given a bronze mirror yesterday, and when he used it to shave, he decided not to be proud today. Gifts wander through lives, nudging toward ease. The letter will reach the northern house of scribes by moonrise, where a man with sore eyes will smile to see the bead and set his shoulders gently. He will read the list, nod at its kindness, and sleep before sealing the reply. Sleep is a treaty too. Sometimes presence is the rarest gift. The queen boards a low, wide boat and faces the current. No drums, no pennants, only a basket of pomegranates and a folded shawl. You hear the muffled thump of oars against leather thole straps. Philae's temple rises like a dream of symmetry, columns catching light the color of honey. The priests here favor quiet arrivals. The queen understands and matches the volume. Her hair is braided under a simple linen scarf. A lotus pin marks her rank without shouting. She carries not gold, but a small cedar box. When she meets the island's high priest, she offers the box with 2 hands. Inside, a copper singing bowl and a written suggestion, twice daily bowl tones to mark ferry crossings so boats stagger their landings instead of wrestling. The priest smiles at the elegance of it, at the idea that a sound, not a law, can smooth traffic. They strike the bowl once. The tone sluices through pillar shadows, a river of air. You feel the calm of decisions that fit like sandals. They walk the island paths, counting heartbeats between lampposts to set the interval for the bell. The queen eats a pomegranate seed and imagines boats arriving like notes in a lullaby. A gull wheels once, thinking its own thought. The priest promises to set the bowl on a high step. The queen thanks him with a date honey cake from her basket. Even exchanges, even breath. The night market wakes after the day rests. Lanterns hang in palm groves like tame stars. Drummers test skins with their thumbs, setting a beat that neither urges nor delays. The queen's steward places baskets of dates at 3 stall corners, a triangle of sweetness that means friendly prices for small boats. This is the language of markets, and you learn it as your eyes adjust. A perfume seller waves a strip of linen through smoke. 1 loop for welcome, 2 for bargain, 3 for later. A potter stacks cups so their handles make a river shape. It means credit for ferrymen who return the cups unchipped. The steward smiles, because diplomacy needs these tiny gears almost more than the gold ones. Gifts go out disguised as convenience, and gratitude returns disguised as a good night's sleep. Children try on beaded collars and take them off again with care, as if borrowing sunshine. The queen, veiled, listens to the rhythms of buying and forgiving. She buys nothing and changes everything. You feel yourself loosen the way knots loosen when the rope has remembered water. A lull settles, the kind that means a long, safe season if no one breaks it. At the side door of the riverside temple stands a doorkeeper whose job is to say no without making it feel like no. He wears sandals repaired 3 times and a bracelet of twisted reed. The queen's page approaches with a small parcel, 2 faience bracelets the colour of shallow water. For swift hands and a gentle voice, the tag says. The doorkeeper blinks and then laughs from the chest, a sound that oils hinges. He slips 1 bracelet on and pockets the other for his daughter. That single adjustment, of wrist of heart, changes the turn of a long day. He begins to wave certain petitioners through a little sooner. Boatwomen with sleeping babies, a potter with a tray that must cool by noon, an old man who has forgotten why he came, but feels better upon entering. The temple runs a shade smoother, the river runs a shade safer. You stand near the lintel and notice how gifts do not dissolve the rules. They teach the rules to hum. The doorkeeper now greets each arrival with a question instead of a palm. "What do you need most?" he asks. Often the answer is not what the petitioners thought. He learns to solve small knots before they tighten. At sundown, he ties his reed bracelet around the door pull as a reminder. Be soft when you can be. Inside, lamps flower on cue. Outside, the Queen's page takes a different way home, and a breeze chooses another path along the riverbank. The bracelets have already earned their cost. Night spreads a silk shawl over the pyramids east of the city. The Queen climbs a low terrace where astronomers mark the sky with strings pulled taut between pegs. They do not command the stars, they measure their patience. A scholar points to a bright wandering light and names it for a god who prefers steady offerings to spectacular oaths. The Queen nods. "So do I," she says. She has promised many small things this week. A schedule set by a bull's voice, a key given to a granary, a giraffe's visit to a guarded yard. You feel how these promises fit together like bricks that want to be neighbours. A cold jar of water grows dew in her hand. She drinks and hands it to the astronomer, who sips as if the jar were rare. "Tomorrow," she says, "we ask less and give more." He smiles into his beard. Below, the city makes its tiny noises, goats settling, lovers murmuring, a pot chinking as it cools. Above, the moon imagines itself a pearl crawling over black silk. The Queen thinks of the envoy sleeping with a perfume bottle under his pillow and wishes him uncomplicated dreams. She makes a careful promise inside her own breath. If war comes, it will find us sitting together. If peace stays, it will find us busy with small, kind work. She descends the steps, as if wearing quiet on her shoulders. Morning finds the archive cool and smelling of clay. The scribe prepares sealings for baskets that must travel unopened. Tiny discs pressed with the Queen's lotus. Others marked with a giraffe, a boat, a sheaf of millet. Icons that guide hands without many words. Each symbol is a whisper across distance. You feel the pleasure of order as rows of fresh discs dry on a reed tray. The Queen arrives with a list of recipients whose names taste like places. Philae's Ferry House, the Northern Patrol Granary, the Red Sea Oil Guild. She suggests one new seal, a small ear. For gifts that ask for listening, she says. The scribe carves the curve with a slow blade. An ear can be an emblem of power too, when the powerful choose to hear. Runners come and go, tying ceilings with palm fibre to lids, to scrolls, to necks of bottles. In this room, authority is soft enough to press with a thumb. You stand by the door and watch a page testing each symbol with closed eyes, guessing meaning by memory of touch. He gets most right, laughs when he does not, and keeps learning. Outside, a dove drinks from a shallow dish and leaves tiny commas of wet on the edge. The seals will dry by noon. By evening, they will be far away, doing their secret work, opening hearts without opening packages. Beyond the city, the desert carries its quiet, like a sacred bead. A caravan stage lies around a well lined with stone rings, each ring older than a quarrel. The Queen's engineer kneels to taste the water and smiles. Sweet today. A group of border herders arrive with goats and the wary calm of people used to being asked to move. The Queen sits on a woven mat, no guards between them, only a jar of shade. She offers a plan written not on papyrus but on ground with a reed. 3 days of open water in every 10. Gifts of salt and rope on those days, and a chest of copper cups to keep here, each cup stamped with a lotus. Anyone who drinks from the lotus cups owes a song, not a tax. The herders murmur, and one woman hums a tune to test how a promise feels in the throat. It feels like a spring after a long noon. You feel the desert approve. Even the wind shortens its sentences. The engineer marks the schedule on a slate. The herders select a boy to be the cupkeeper. He cradles the chest like a baby goat. The queen leaves a final gift, a palm sapling in a clay pot. Plant it by the third ring, she says, so shade has a birthday. Water is a treaty that nobody argues with for long. From the east, traders bring the sea without bringing its noise. Their camels carry cedar oil in stoppered jars, myrrh wrapped like careful tears, and cinnamon bark that crumbles into warm stories. The queen receives them in a courtyard strewn with reed mats. Instead of gold, she offers intelligence, a map of river depths, updated yesterday by boatwomen, and a list of ferrymen who sing true. Songs are a compass, she says. The traders nod. On open water, a right song is as good as a star. They exchange gifts, oil for pilots, spices for schedules. A woman merchant with a salt-white braid presents a small casket of pearls. The queen smiles and passes back an ebony writing board oiled until it shines. So your sums slip without splinters, she says. You can feel how these items will travel carrying permission to be kind. The merchants speak of ports where men are hurried and forget their shoes. They like it better here where time walks instead of runs. By dusk, agreements are simple enough to fit inside a lullaby. The merchants teach a Red Sea farewell gesture. 2 fingers touch to the brow, then to the heart. The queen answers with the lotus seal pressed into a bead of wax on each jar mouth. You are expected, you are welcome. The courtyard smells like cedar and evening. Camels bend and rise as gently as old rocking chairs. Not everything can remain ink. In a yard, bright with stone dust, carvers work a slab of granite into a patient page. The text will be brief. Brevity sleeps better. Let boats bearing oil pass at dawn and dusk. Let grain travel with a song. Let the granary key open to hunger, not to greed. The carver tastes each phrase in his mouth before setting chisel to stone, because words in granite are bread that will be eaten by grandchildren. The queen watches, not to command, but to keep faith with slowness. She asks the carver to leave a wide margin for birds, a relief border of ibis and heron, so even the least literate will feel the meaning. The envoy arrives, runs his fingers along a groove, and nods with eyes closed. Words that can be felt are useful when tempers blind. You feel the coolness of shadow as the slab tilts to accept more sky. A child brings water in a red cup and counts the chisel strikes until she runs out of numbers and returns to 1. The carver smiles. Repetition is trust. By afternoon, the stele is almost finished. The queen adds a final line. When in doubt, listen for the bowl. Somewhere on Philae, the copper-singing bowl sends a soft, timed river into the air. At a temple gate, flanked by sandstone pylons, a priest with a voice like cool shade receives the queen's concerns about a northern patrol captain who still counts tolls with a hard jaw. He will soften, the priest says, if his mother sleeps after supper. The queen smiles. This temple knows people the way boatwomen know cross-currents. The priest suggests a gift, not expensive, but exact. A bronze mortar and pestle for spice grinding, to be delivered to the captain's mother with a recipe for cinnamon sesame bread. You can almost taste the bread as he recites. Grind slowly, add warmth. Feed the house before the house grows sharp. The queen nods, already seeing the mortar on a shelf, the pestle shining with use. The captain arriving late to quarrel because the kitchen held him gently. Patience, the priest adds, is an herb you must dry before you brew. She laughs softly. The pylons throw tall, comfortable shadows. A scribal novice writes the recipe with care, drawing a little mortar in the margin so no one mistakes the parcel. The queen leaves a garland of flax on the temple step. Gratitude woven and left where gods and people share space. A dove drinks and agrees by silence. Somewhere a boy runs with the parcel toward the captain's street. Cinnamon will reach the household before any argument does. The city feels it already. Corners rounded, footsteps quieter, a long exhale. You wake with the city, the kind of waking that doesn't startle, the kind that stretches. At the outer gate, sunrise paints the lintel with mellow fire, and an elephant moves through it like a drifting hill. The procession is not thunder, it is breath. The Kandake walks before the great grey curve with a palm leaf held sideways, as if shading the day itself. Behind her, porters lift baskets of sesame and sorghum, and a drummer tests a skin so softly the beats feel like footsteps under sand. Today's route follows the shaded lanes and ends at the granary court, where onlookers will receive not coins, but cups of sweet porridge. Processions can brag. This one soothes. The elephant is both spectacle and signal. No one is hurried when there's an elephant in the lane. You notice how the queen sets the pace with her palm leaf, an unspoken law moving at a human heartbeat. At corners, children rub amulets for courage. Old women lean on door frames. The envoy watches from a balcony, smiling because power here smells like cooked grain and warm dust. When they reach the court, the elephant lowers its head to a wooden basin and drinks as if blessing it. The queen ladles porridge to a ferryman's wife, nods to a baker, and places a small coil of copper in a potter's hand. Payment for the silence of good clay. The morning curls around itself like steam rising from a bowl. Your shoulders drop. The day will be kind. You remember the giraffe, and so does the city. A second lesson follows the first spectacle. Etiquette for a creature that sees rooftops the way you see thresholds. The court naturalist explains with delight that you never approach a giraffe straight on. You arc like a crescent moon and keep your eyes low, as if admiring the colour of leaves. The queen listens, because courtesy to animals teaches courtesy to people who feel taller or smaller than they are. The envoy's pages practice bows at a respectful distance, while handlers prepare a shallow trough of mulberry leaves. Do not reach up, the naturalist says. Offer sideways. Let the tall one choose. This is the whole chapter of diplomacy in one gesture. You can feel it settle into the bones of the courtyard. Even the pigeons seem to nod. When the giraffe finally steps into view, the queen offers leaves without hurry. Children imitate her, arms out, hands steady. The giraffe chooses calmly and chews as if considering a clause. The envoy laughs, and something in his stance loosens. Later, at table, he will propose an adjustment to patrol schedules that allows the smallest boats to pass during nap hours. His idea, born under a long shadow. The giraffe blinks slow approval. Etiquette is a ladder you climb without scaring yourself. The palace bakery breathes a sweetness that persuades more surely than speeches. You stand at the threshold where ovens glow like small suns, and trays of date honey cakes cool on reed racks. The master baker folds sesame into batter so meticulously that the spoon never knocks the bowl. Borders, she says, prefer soft edges. She bakes them here. The queen orders 3 baskets, one for the Northern Watch, one for the ferry house, and one for the patrol captain's mother, whose mortar, you may recall, will scent the kitchen with cinnamon. Each basket carries a tag with a small practical permission, an extra pilot at dawn, a shorter inspection for boats carrying temple lamps, a line of shade cloth for the ferry queue. You feel your own throat ease just reading them. When the envoy arrives for an informal tasting, he laughs at how the cakes break cleanly but never crumble. That, the baker explains, is the secret of holding shape while giving way. The queen raises a brow as if to say the principle travels far beyond pastry. Outside, a courier runs with a basket under his arm like a baby goat. The boarder will eat its lesson one mouthful at a time. So will you, sweetness as instruction, warmth as law. In a shaded alcove, merchants set down a cloth and unfold a handful of bronze mirrors from lands that feel like rumors, polished circles framed by twisted metal, the surfaces bright enough to hold a sky. One mirror bears a tiny wolf engraving, another shows a vine in a style unfamiliar to these banks. Rome, someone whispers, though Rome itself has not walked this courtyard. Objects travel ahead of their makers. The queen lifts a mirror and sees not just her eye, but a procession of possibilities. Grain measured to a foreign rhythm, letters crossing seas, treaties that must speak both river and road. She hands a mirror to the envoy with a smile that says, "We can look without lunging." He angles it to send a beam of light along the wall, where it lands on a carved lotus and stays there, a small golden guest. You notice how the bronze does not flatter. It reveals. The queen asks for 4 mirrors, 2 for border houses, 1 for the temple school, 1 for the captain whose mother will soon bake cinnamon bread. "Let them learn to see themselves seeing," she says. A mirror in a watch post changes posture. Men shave better and argue less. A mirror in a school helps children recognize their own attention. The vine-etched circle returns to its pouch, destined for a shelf where it will teach its lesson quietly. The world is wider, but your face still fits inside it. South of the palace, the river widens like a long exhale, and papyrus barges wait with their bellies already humming with cotton bales. The boatwomen check the lashings. Palm fiber ropes caressed with beeswax so they glide without squeal. You hear their low song about knots that remember night. The queen arrives without ceremony and asks after currents and sandbars. The captain points with her chin because her hands are busy speaking to ropes. A scribe reads the freight slate. Cotton for the temple looms, oil for lamps, a chest of quartz amulets for the children of officials who wake frightened. The queen adds a small bundle to the cargo, goose feather quills wrapped in linen, a gift for the northern scribes whose margins make peace. "Send with the orange boat," she says. "It keeps the rhythm." The captain grins. When the barges shove off, they carry not only goods, but a temperature. Cooler, slower, the kind that makes negotiations lean toward yes. You watch the wakes knit and unknit like weaving. Ferrymen on the far bank raise hands in signal. The copper bowl at Philae stills disputes like a firm lullaby. Cotton, oil, amulets, and a handful of new quills. Sleep and writing travelling together. The river approves, shouldering its freight without complaint. The queen knows that oars dip quieter when the rower's belly is content. In a warehouse that smells like flour and riverwood, she inaugurates a new practice. Bread tokens, small clay loaves stamped with a lotus, redeemable at 6 river bakeries from dusk to dawn. Wages can jingle and stir envy. Tokens whisper and feed. A line of boatmen, shoulders rounded by water's weight, accept the tokens with the grave humour of men who have seen storms forget their lines. The quartermaster explains that a token buys bread and a pinch of salt. 2 tokens buy bread, salt, and a handful of dates. 3 tokens purchase a loaf big enough to share with a stranger. You feel the rule carry its own torch. Sharing is a line item, not a lecture. That night, the docks are quieter. Nobody argues about whose turn it is to fetch supper. The envoy observes from a pier and notices that even the way ropes are coiled changes. Tidier, less hurried. He writes a note to himself. Way policy in loaves. Somewhere, a boy breaks bread in 2 pieces and gives the slightly bigger half to his tired father. These are the wages that prevent raised voices tomorrow. The plain of Butana greets afternoon with a surprise shower, one of those rains that seems to remember every thirsty leaf by name. Farmers lift their faces and let the water find them. The queen arrives under a hooded litter, but steps out to feel the same blessing, because rulers without rain on their lashes forget important things. You can smell the earth's happiness, dark and cool, the way a clay jar smells when first filled. She visits a field where women seed lines with careful feet. They show her a new method learned from a caravan woman, spacing like chess, where every grain has a safe square. We call it the giraffe walk. A farmer laughs. Long steps, gentle landings. The queen kneels and sprinkles a pinch of sesame from her own pouch. The gesture says we are in the same row. The envoy tours a neighbouring field and asks about flood marks. He learns more in 5 minutes of mud talk than in an hour of parchments. That evening, a granary steward recalculates tolls against the promise of a better harvest and writes the numbers with a clean conscience. Rain on Butana means softer politics downstream. You hear frogs arguing politely about puddles. You hear your own breath even out. The year just grew a shade more generous. Not all rivals bite. Some remember they have teeth and choose not to use them. A neighbouring chief, stern, proud, a man of straight paths, arrives with 5 spearmen and a worry shaped like a drought. The queen receives him in a side court where shadows keep tempers cool. She hands him not words, not lecture, but a key, iron, lotus engraved, bound to a clay tablet, stating the terms. Grain for hunger only, escorted by 2 of his own. The chief weighs the key as if measuring himself. Trust, he says, is a rope that frays when stared at. The queen nods. Then we will not stare. We will use it. The spearmen relax by a finger's width, which is far in the language of guarding. You feel how a gift can be a bridge that knows it is a bridge. A scribe notes the loan with 2 witnesses, an elder potter and a midwife, because food and birth know the truth about promises. By sundown, the chief departs quieter than he arrived, the key nested in a leather pouch. No feast, no fuss, only the heavy lightness of an obligation accepted. Somewhere, a field hears the story and prepares to try harder. Agreements love tables. In a hall strung with woven screens, the scribe lays out papyrus sheets smoothed with a shell. The envoy sits, rolls his shoulders, and takes up a reed pen that has never lied. Slow ink, the queen murmurs, and he smiles, because he has learned that she sees even small muscles. The oath is not a roar. It is 4 clauses and a silence. Ferries keep the bowls time. Patrols respect granary keys. Temple oil boats pay the smallest toll. Disputes sleep overnight before being woken to speech. The envoy writes each line as if placing stepping stones through a stream. You hear the pen's whisper. The scribe sprinkles a little sand. The letters dry like dew into morning. A goose feather quill lies nearby as a gift. Tomorrow's nib for tomorrow's corrections. Treaties that invite revision sleep better than those sealed against breath. The envoy presses his signet into a dot of wax and looks up, surprised to find his chest lighter. He has been heard all week, and the hearing has healed him. He tucks the spare reed behind his ear like a promise to himself. Night returns the desert to its first math. Wayfinders gather on a low ridge and extend strings between finger and star, measuring not distance but mercy. The sky's mercy in repeating itself. The earth's mercy in remembering ankles. The queen asks them to teach a method that merchants can carry without a teacher, counting heartbeats between bright markers, matching breath to dunes. An old navigator laughs softly. We learned from goats, he says. They rest before they need to. He shows how to mark a walking song with pauses so that a caravan never arrives at trouble breathless. The envoy listens like a boy at a door he's not supposed to open. He's tasting a freedom he didn't expect to be delicious. They draw a map in the sand. 5-star pauses between wells. 3 pauses between known acacias. 1 pause when the moon shares its face. You realize maps do not need ink to stick. They need bodies to practice them. The queen gifts the wayfinders copper singing bells, small ones, to hang on camel harnesses, tuned so that no caravan dozes into another. Music as anti-collision. The ridge keeps the night, and your own breath counts itself into stillness. In a side chamber, cool as a jar kept in shade, a basket of quartz amulets waits for small necks. Children of clerks and guards and boatwomen come shyly to receive them. Little pebbles drilled and threaded on flax, each one cloudy with the kind of light that calms. The queen kneels to tie knots, and your heart does something practical. It steadies. Each amulet arrives with a story. This one is a piece of a star that fell into a goat track. This one is river ice that forgot to melt. Children's fear of night shrinks under such explanations and becomes a polite guest. The envoy, passing by, dips his head and asks for one for his daughter far away. The queen smiles and chooses a stone that looks like dawn, trapped on purpose. You can feel the palace breathe easier when children sleep. Adults argue less when breakfast did not begin in tears. The amulets achieve what guards cannot. A treaty between eyelids and dreams. If you have a worry, imagine touching a cool pebble with your thumb. Feel how it takes nothing from you and gives you back a margin. The veil in Amun's inner room is a painted cloth that moves as if lightly breathing. Oracles here do not shout. They interpret drafts. The queen enters with a bowl of offerings. Figs cut in quiet crescents, a pinch of cinnamon, a folded paper with no words, only a pressed ear seal. She presents them and waits, because waiting is older than prophecy. The oracle, a woman with a voice like rain on a pavilion, asks not what the queen wants, but what she is willing to leave. The queen answers by sliding a bronze comb across the floor. "My certainty," she says, "keep it for a week." You feel the world tilt onto its softest point. The oracle smiles and declares that gifts will work if they remain gifts and do not become debts. "Let them be feathers," she intones, "not weights." As the veil stirs, the oracle traces a future in smoke. Barges that pass like migrating birds, a granary that opens like a hand, a treaty read aloud by a grandmother, while children shell beans. The queen bows to the ordinary holiness of it. When she leaves, she is lighter by one comb and heavier by a sentence that will hold. You leave a worry here too, letting the veil breathe it into something manageable. Pilgrims approach the cataracts, like students attending the old teacher who refuses to raise her voice. They carry jars for blessing water and stories folded like cloaks. The queen joins them without guard banners, only a narrow strip of blue cloth tied at her wrist. At the water stairs, boatwomen hold out hands for each other and for strangers. Skin meets skin like a vow remembered. A child asks why steps descend into a river that rises and falls without asking permission. "So we remember to meet it halfway," the queen says. The envoy overhears and writes the line in his mind for a future that needs reminding. You follow the procession down a few wet steps and stop where the current's shoulder rests against stone. Prayers here are practical. Safe crossings, honest waits at the ferry scales, a pair of sandals that last the season, a fever that fades. The copper bowl's tone from Philae drifts on wind. Some pilgrims cry because music knows their names. The queen lowers her palm into the eddy and lifts it to her forehead, cool blessing on a warm mind. The river keeps moving, which is a comfort. No petition has to carry the whole tide. In a shaded study, an old general with laugh lines like river deltas sets ivory pieces on a board. Lions, ibis, humble houses. "War is noisy," he says, "so we will learn in whispers." The queen's niece leans in, eager to understand the silent geometry that keeps food on tables. The general moves a house pawn and calls it a granary. He moves a lion and names it pride. He moves an ibis and calls it news. They play without taking pieces, only trading positions. "This," he says, "is how we gift our way around a blockade. Send news where pride expects a spear. Send granary where news expects a boast. You see how the board becomes a map of courtyards and kitchens. The envoy, watching, laughs softly when he sees his own fan as a bishop, gliding diagonals through heated rooms. No victory is declared, only a sequence of comfortable standoffs. The lesson ends when the niece captures a corner without touching a single piece. She simply opens a window and lets in air. Strategy here is a breeze, not a storm. You realize you've been holding your breath and let it out, quieter than a dove. Twilight climbs the sandstone like a quiet vine. The queen journeys to Napata's old stones, where ancestral names sleep close to the skin of the earth. She sits between pyramids that look like folded hands and listens, because this is a place where listening answers more questions than speaking does. A priestess pours water along a stele's base, and the stone darkens as if nodding awake. "Do we gift too much?" the queen asks the air. The answer wanders back as a memory. A grandmother trading a comb for a rumour that saved a harvest. An aunt offering a shawl so a midwife would arrive through a storm. Gifts do not weaken, they weave. You feel the loom threads snugging. The queen places a basket of millet on the step for any pilgrim who arrives hungry, then remains until the stars find their positions. The envoy stands respectfully away and leaves a small thing of his own, a reed pen from the north, set at the base of a lesser stone, because lesser stones keep the same patient watch. He whispers thanks for the week he did not expect to go this well. When they depart, the desert holds its breath and then releases it. Ancestors prefer that people sleep soon. At Philae, the experiment becomes a habit. The copper bowl's tone now marks crossings morning and evening, and quarrels have learned the schedule's shape. The queen returns with a set of smaller bowls, each tuned a little differently, and gives them to ferries on tributaries like bracelets distributed to daughters. A young pilot admits he sleeps better, knowing his shift will arrive wrapped in sound. An elderly fisher smiles and says the river hums now like a cat that owns the house but loves the people. The queen nods and suggests a third daily tone on market days, lower and longer, an audible hand on a shoulder asking crowds to breathe. You feel the idea settle, the way silt settles to make a river deeper in the right places. The envoy buys a bowl for himself, ridiculous for a diplomat, wonderful for a father. He plans to tap it before beginning letters, a small ring to round the corners of his own sentences. The island air tastes like metal and figs. Listening, you realize, is a gift that keeps its wrapping on forever. Night schools gather where lamps agree to burn. In a long room cool as a remembered cave, children and adults sit shoulder to shoulder, each with a board and a piece of charcoal. The queen establishes lamp grants, oil jars for teachers who keep doors open after sunset. Education stretches days without fraying them. A lesson blooms on the wall. How to write a polite refusal, how to note a debt without shaming, how to list gifts so their order persuades. The envoy teaches 1 hour, laughing at himself when charcoal smudges his nose. "If you can write an apology before you need it," he says, "your future will sleep better." The room hums with the sound of pages turned and not regretted. You watch a boatwoman form letters that look like boats, and a guard captain write the word patience 3 times, smaller each time until it fits on his thumbnail. Outside, the river strokes the bank with the back of its hand. Lamps make their circle of day inside a courteous darkness. Knowledge and oil. 2 old friends. Ropes keep more than boats from drifting. The rope yard stretches beneath tamarisk shade where women twist palm fibers with the serious cheer of people who know their work keeps agreements from unraveling. A good rope, the forewoman says, is a polite argument, strong, flexible, and never shouting. She demonstrates the 3-strand lay and how beeswax turns friction into cooperation. The Queen orders lengths cut for ferry moorings, market shades, and training rings for young oxen. The envoy asks, half joking, for one to tie around his temper. The forewoman hands him a slender cord and shows how to wrap it on his wrist as a reminder. He laughs, then keeps it. You feel the yard's rhythm. Twist, lay, smooth, hum, ease your own breathing. Bundles leave labelled for specific corners of the city where tempers fray. A queue by the fish market, the alley near the tax post, the checkpoint where rumours collect. Shade ropes go up, lines straighten, moods follow. Ropes become policies you can touch, and a bargeman sings thanks out loud to no one in particular. The treaty will be read with mouths as well as eyes. In the pottery quarter, kilns thrum like contented bees, and potters throw cups that will carry date wine for the oath meal. The Queen specifies a shape that cools quickly and fits both slender and broad hands. A treaty cup, the master potter says, should not prefer one grip. They mix clay from two banks, north and south, because symbolism tastes better than speeches. You watch a young potter score and slip handles, then stamp a tiny lotus so shallow you feel it more than see it. The envoy arrives to choose glaze tones that do not seek attention. He picks river brown and a thread of green at the rim. Like reeds, he says. Like promises that bend. When the first cups emerge, they ping faintly as they cool. Everyone stops to listen. The Queen closes her eyes. You close yours. The sound is like the bowl at Philae, but thinner, as if the cups know their job is to echo, not to lead. The oath meal will taste of dates, cinnamon, and baked earth, the flavour of good, ordinary peace. Under a tamarisk that dusts the air with green, the Queen meets a merchant whose temper is famous for leaving rooms before he does. No guards, no benches, just ground, shade, and a shared bowl of watered beer. You stand at a respectful distance and witness the art of unarmoured talk. The merchant complains about a patrol officer who counts with his shoulders. The Queen listens, folds her legs, and passes him the bowl without comment. When he finishes, she offers a small palm fibre rope, the wrist kind, and a single bread token. For your temper, for your crew, she says. He laughs despite himself, then loosens, then tells the truth beneath the anger. Fear of delay, fear of spoilage, fear of looking small in front of younger men. They agree on a trial path, one extra pilot on his largest runs, a mirror installed at a blind bend, and a rule he can live with. Complaints first to the quartermaster, not to the wind. He stands, surprised at his own calm, and bows so low the tamarisk sighs. You feel a knot in the city untie itself, strand by patient strand. The shade deepens, as if approving. Heat moves like a dignitary everyone respects. In the West Court, sandalwood fans breathe a cedar-sweet wind, each feathered leaf speaking a language older than ink. The Queen invites attendants, envoys, and doorkeepers to a lesson in shade etiquette. A fan, she says, is not to cool one face only. It steers the weather of a room. You feel the air soften around your shoulders as if you have been seen. The court naturalist demonstrates wrist angles that signal patience, pause, or polite retreat. 3 slow arcs ask for quieter voices. A still, half-open fan promises more listening than talking. When the envoy begins to speak too soon, the Queen lifts her fan so its carved edge aligns with the horizon. Wait for the wind to turn. He smiles, sits back, and lets a thought ripen. Nearby, women trim fronds and smooth sandalwood ribs with pumice, scent rising like a small blessing. A runner arrives with market news but stops at the threshold, reading the fans, before reading the room. He lowers his voice without being told. Gifts of air are the gentlest kind. They do not clutter a ledger, but they rearrange tempers. By the hour's end, the fans have taught a policy. Conversations will break at the 4th slow arc. The person with the smallest complaint may hold the largest fan, and at high noon, no decisions bind unless made under shared shade. You watch the rules enter the city like breeze entering a curtain, seen only by what it moves. On a mat the colour of dry papyrus, craftspeople float small miracles, reed boat miniatures stitched with palm thread, each fitted with a twig mast and a blue thread for river. The Queen orders a dozen, one for each household that watches Meroë with wary affection. Let their children launch fleets in basins, she says. Let the basins remember us kindly. You kneel beside the craftswoman as she knots a prow. She hums a lullaby about crossing safely with your sandals dry. The envoy leans his elbow on a pillar, secretly delighted. He once sailed bowls in bathwater, and diplomacy, he realizes, began there. Each miniature carries a tag with a small instruction. Race at dusk, not at noon. Sing to the water first. Share your wind with a friend's boat. Rules disguised as play. Pages pack the boats into woven sleeves with cedar curls to keep ants honest. A courier will walk them to thresholds where rivals' children dream of wide water, and parents count grain. The Queen adds one extra miniature for the patrol captain's courtyard, a joke and a balm. He will pretend to frown and then fix its mast. You can almost hear the future splashing softly in basins across the border, a neighbourhood of gentle quarrels about whose wind is fair. When gifts find small hands first, big hands arrive open. The boats will teach timing, sharing, and the courage to aim for the slow side of a current. Tonight somewhere, a child will fall asleep holding a reed stern, fingers smelling faintly of river. In the scriptorium, quiet sits on shelves like folded linen. The scribe lays out goose-feather quills beside ink cups, lamp black, red ochre, a rare blue earned from careful trade. Margins, he tells a semicircle of clerks and junior envoys, are where peace hides until it is strong enough for the centre. He demonstrates a soft nib cut that invites small notes. Delay one day, send figs first, wait for the bowl. The Queen enters and requests a new practice. Every treaty copy must include a wide left margin and a narrow right. Left for kindness, right for caution. The envoy nods, immediately writing in the generous space. Pilot gift list before tolls. You feel the room recognize itself as a machine for deceleration. A novice blots too eagerly, and the scribe smiles, showing how to lift sand in a pinch and let it fall like forgetful rain. The blue ink goes only to names of ferries and granaries, places that should be treated like delicate bones. Do not waste blue on boasts, the Queen says. Pens scratch like mice with good manners. By evening, a shelf of fresh copies gleams with wide, welcoming shoulders. Margins widen minds. People write differently when space is held for second thoughts. You imagine a watchman reading a note at dawn in a margin and deciding to wave a boat through before breakfast. The quill's feather whispers. Argument folds its wings. Spice merchants roll into the court like a warm memory. Baskets exhale cinnamon, cardamom, fenugreek. The air itself starts telling stories. The Queen proposes something exquisitely simple. Scent routes. Let porters carry sachets along checkpoints, she says, so noses recognize friends before eyes decide. You smile because your whole body understands before your thoughts do. A woman trader shows sachets sewn from scrap linen and tied with lotus blue thread. The envoy sniffs, closes his eyes and laughs. Somewhere a childhood doorway opens. They map a path by aroma. Cinnamon for ferry houses, cardamom for granaries, myrrh for temple gates. Watchmen will learn to say, I smell safe passage. Scents cross frontiers faster than tongues. You watch as sachets are tucked into guard posts, under scales, by ledgers. At sunset, the courtyard smells like a gentle festival. A baker suggests adding a hint of toasted sesame near tax tables. Calms the stomach. The Queen agrees. The policy is not etched, it is breathed. Later, a patrol officer pauses at a dispute, catches cinnamon on the wind, and remembers this is a ferry house. His voice lowers by instinct. Peace has a nose today, and it walks ahead of boots. At the metalsmith's bench, bracelets wait like coiled rivers. Bronze circlets ending in small lion heads, their mouths closed in dignified quiet. The Queen commissions them not for lords, but for women who keep the city steady. Boat captains, midwives, market wardens. Strength, she says, does not need teeth to show. Silk cords line the inside, so sun-warmed metal kisses skin kindly. The smith taps a final chisel mark at each brow, a barely visible furrow that reads as watchfulness. The envoy tries one on and laughs, then slips it to a boat captain instead. The lion settles against her pulse. May your decisions walk like a lion across wet sand, leaving prints, not wounds, the Queen offers. You feel the blessings settle with a surprising weightlessness. Bracelets travel out in a small procession, paired with folded notes, promising first hearing at complaint tables and a cut from the treaty kiln upon each major decision rendered with patience. The market warden lifts her arm, and sunlight rings from bronze to stall canvas to the calm faces below. A symbol spreads like shade. No roar, just readiness. Gum arabic glints like sun-caught honey in shallow bowls. A healer explains its small miracle. Mixed in warm water, it coats a throat and persuades it to be kind. The Queen convenes singers, criers, heralds, and negotiators, the city's voices, under a fig tree and passes cups that shine like patience. Speak after sweetness, the healer says, and see if your words choose longer roads. The envoy, often sore from speeches, sips, clears his throat, and hears a softer version of himself. He decides to move his hardest clause to the end of tomorrow's list, where it can lie down after the others. You sense the fig leaves applauding by making no sound at all. Kits are packed. Small jars of gum arabic, sprigs of mint, fig-slice tokens that entitle the bearer to a pause. Heralds leave with their voices newly upholstered. A temple singer drinks, sings a scale, and laughs. No gravel, only meadow. The policy that follows is as quiet as dew. No public announcements at high noon. All criers receive gum before verdicts. And in disputes, the person with the rawest voice drinks first. A city can learn to talk to itself again. In the granary court, granite mortars squat like friendly turtles. Households gather with spices wrapped in cloth. Sesame whispers to coriander, cumin courts fennel. The Queen proposes an oathmeal grounded, literally, in shared grinding. We will prepare the flavour together, she says, and the crowd answers with the agreeable rustle of people who like eating better than arguing. Mortars receive offerings in turn. The patrol captain's mother steps forward with cinnamon. The baker pours a stream of toasted sesame like warm sand. A midwife adds anise for calm hearts. Pestles rise and fall, patient as oxen. You smell peace before you hear it. The envoy joins in, sleeves rolled, shoulder remembering work. His laughter bursts like a clove and then mellows. Children circle with date wine cups from the pottery quarter, tasting foam and learning restraint. The Queen sprinkles a last pinch of salt, clarity, and the spice paste thickens into agreement. Oaths spoken over food bind farther, because hunger and pride both nod. A stele will remember the clauses, but mouths will remember the meal. Tonight, kitchens will echo the grinding rhythm when stories retell this day. Evening lowers its shoulder to the courtyard, and everyone leans with it. The treaty cups, mixed clay, lotus-shadowed, are filled with date wine, the colour of mellow fire. The Queen raises hers, but does not clink. The rule tonight is toasts that leave no echo. May boats pass like verses, she says, and may verses end in sleep. The crowd drinks, and silence absorbs the blessing like bread sopping stew. The envoy offers his cup to the watch officer whose jaw had been a border. They drink in one direction, toward the river, so words can travel where they are needed. A child coughs, and a temple singer hands her a gum Arabic sip. Even the small interruptions become part of the ceremony's grammar. You feel the quiet organize itself around kindness. When the cups are set down, cloth pads catch them, and not a single tap complains. Agreements settle under the skin. Lamps find their steady height. Moths drift as if reading clauses. No cheer goes up, and yet a cheer arrives, softer than wind, stronger than habit. The treaty now has breath. At a jeweler's stall, amber looks like sunlight that decided to keep still. The queen selects strings for those who steer worry for others. Midwives, ferrymen, scribes who read late. Wear when the sky forgets itself, the tag says. The envoy rubs a bead between fingers. It warms as if remembering a summer afternoon on command. A child asks if insects sleep inside. The jeweler lifts a bead with a tiny trapped wing and says, "Even the past needs rest." Laughter loosens a knot at the edge of the crowd. The queen asks that every amber necklace carry a single faience spacer, river blue among the honey, to remind the wearer where the light will return. You feel the colour pairing like two hands finding each other under a table. Amber goes out into the city and begins its quiet labour. A midwife's back straightens at the 12th birth of the week. A ferryman keeps singing through a late wind. A clerk finishes the last margin with gentleness. Gifts can store weather. They can also store courage for when you cannot find yours. Tonight, many necks glow faintly in lamplight, and a few dreams choose brighter roads. Before peace can wander off to nap, it needs a final list, the kind that asks softly but stands firmly. In the scribe's court, papyrus sheets are stacked, tied with palm fibre and sealed with the ear emblem. The queen dictates the last gentle demands. Ferry pilots paid in tokens before sunrise. Market shade ropes inspected weekly. Bowls struck on feast eves to stagger joy as well as work. The envoy adds 2 lines. Guards to learn fan signals, and watch posts to hang 1 bronze mirror at shaving height. He signs with the reed that has grown friendly in his hand. You hear the final sand blown across ink, a hush that sounds like completion. Pages fold the bundle into linen scented with cedar and knot it with a bead that remembers the river. A runner kneels, receiving the papyrus as if it were a sleeping child. He will take the ferry at first light when the bowl calls the water awake. The queen touches the bundle and releases it the way one releases a worry to find another job. Lists can be lullabies when they promise fewer surprises. You feel the city steady itself around what comes next. Routine. A festival of the everyday. Night collects along the reeds like velvet dust. Boatwomen push off from the quay in pairs, oars dipping with the courtesy of visitors removing sandals. Their song begins low, a hush disguised as melody, verses about knots that never forget, about pilots who read moonlight as if it were handwriting. Each refrain names a bend in the river, not to conquer it, but to greet it. Good evening, crocodile sandbar. Good evening, patient backwater. The banks hear their names and relax. The queen stands under a fig tree, shawl drawn close, listening as if counting pearls she did not buy. She has asked for this lullaby to travel ahead of barges on treaty nights, a gentler escort than spears. The envoy rests on a mooring stone, eyes closed, learning the chorus so his scribes can copy it into margins. Song is a gift that weighs nothing and yet moves freight. Between verses, the boatwomen share woven wrist loops, blue for pilots, green for ferry steers, white for those who carry temple oil. The loops are not badges, they are reminders. When knotted together on a hook, they mean do not hurry this dock. When worn alone, they mean pass softly. A newborn sleeps nearby. You can feel the river matching the tempo, a wide animal choosing the slower breath. As boats glide, reeds answer with their own thin music, wind on teeth. A girl learns the anchor verse, missing a note and grinning, then catching it perfectly, closing a small circle. The queen claps once, not to break the spell but to tie it. The song rounds the last bend and lays itself down on the water like a blanket. You too feel covered. Morning opens the market like a careful fan. At the credit table, ebony writing boards lie in a row, oiled until they shine like pooled shade. A clerk draws tally grooves with a bone stylus, wide marks for grain, narrow for lamp oil, a tiny circle for a bowl of stew given to someone who forgot their purse. Debts, he says softly. Sleep better when counted in wood you can touch. The queen watches the first exchanges. A ferryman receives 2 grooves of bread credit, payable when the river's shoulder eases. A weaver leaves 3 narrow grooves for lamp oil, smiling at the board's weight in her hand. The envoy, curious, asks whether the grooves ever make people feel small. The clerk flips a board to show its blank side. We turn it over when shame gets loud, he says. Numbers don't need an audience. Anxious hearts line up, then slow down. The market warden, lion bracelet bright at her wrist, carries a new board to the fish queue where tempers usually boil. She sets it on a stool so anyone can run a fingertip along the grooves and see that tomorrow already exists. You hear small sighs as if jars unsealed themselves. By midday, a child erases 2 grooves with a dab of wax for her grandmother, and the clerk pretends not to see the tear. The queen adds a rule in the left margin of the day's ledger. Forgiveness tallies count double in festivals. Ebony has learned to carry numbers like lullabies carry children, close, steady, and without hurry. The weaving house hums like a hive that forgot how to sting. Looms stand in 2 tidy ranks, warp threads lifted like prayer. The master weaver welcomes the queen and lowers a shuttle that carries 2 histories at once, cotton from upstream fields and flax from riverbank plots, crossing and consenting. Neutral cloth, she says, is not lifeless, it is generous. On a long table, finished lengths rest in river shades. Silt brown, reed green, dawn grey. The queen chooses bolts for civic gifts, a pathcloth to hang above a narrow alley where carts scrape tempers, a shade sail for the tax courtyard, a pair of shawls for rivals' mothers, dyed the colour of calm water. The envoy runs a palm along an edge that does not fray. How? He asks. The weaver smiles. We leave room at the selvage for mistakes to turn around. Apprentices stitch small lotus tags that say, shared way, walk slow. When the pathcloth goes up, children instinctively lower their voices beneath it. Adults follow. A porter pauses, surprised by his own courtesy as he lets a jar-bearer pass. In the tax court, the new shade sail deepens breathing. Cloth has laws woven into it that no pen can improve. By evening, Princess Tahaka tries a reed-green shawl and sees how it changes her posture. Chin lower, shoulders unknotted, eyes kinder. Cloth can teach a face, the master weaver notes. You realize the city will wear this lesson until it no longer feels like a lesson at all. Late day drapes the eastern necropolis in lion-coloured shade. The queen brings a basket of small things, 2 faience beads, a coil of copper, a crust of bread still warm, gifts for ancestors who valued usefulness over spectacle. A priestess draws lines of water along the base of 3 pyramids until the stone darkens like a thoughtful brow. They speak little. The air here disapproves of chatter. The queen kneels, setting the beads for a grandmother who loved bright, cheap jewels more than pearls. The copper for an uncle who fixed hinges until arguments stayed outdoors. The bread for a child who lived brief but stole no time. Are we still yours when we choose gentleness? She asks, not expecting thunder, only the comfort of continuing. Wind answers by moving sand just far enough to expose a shard of painted pottery, a lotus in blue. The priestess smiles. They have opinions, she says, but they prefer you to find them slowly. The queen takes the shard into her palm and imagines it becoming a crown piece, not for glory, but for memory. She will ask the goldsmith to set it where her pulse beats. Leaving, she places a reed boat miniature on a step for other pilgrims to smile at. You feel the city's breath follow her back, long, even, respectful. The dead have blessed the living with permission to rest. By the boathouse, a feather worker spreads a cloak that moves like a slow thought. Pelican feathers, pale as dawn milk, are stitched into linen so light it argues with gravity and wins politely. For ceremony, she tells the queen, but also for shade you can carry. The envoy's eyes brighten. He has never worn a river on his shoulders. 2 cloaks are prepared, one for the Kandake, one for the chief who accepted the granary key. Between the feathers, the worker has hidden narrow slips of reed inscribed with words. Patience, ferry, bread, bowl. When worn, the slips whisper against linen like soft counsel. You can almost hear the garment thinking. At the river's edge, the queen clasps the envoy's cloak at his throat and he laughs, suddenly younger. The rival chief arrives, wary but not armoured, and receives his cloak with a nod that surprises his own men. Pelicans skim the water, then rise, leaving ripples that our eyes translate into sentences. This is yours, and also all of ours. When the wind lifts, the cloaks billow like friendly sails. Children reach out to feel the edges and are not scolded. The feather worker demonstrates folding that prevents breakage because even beauty rests better when taught how. The pact gains a softness that will live longer than its ink. A river blessed itself today, using birds for hands. After sunset, the courtyard becomes a sky of its own. Brass braziers are set in a pattern agreed by astronomers and merchants. Philae to the west, ferry houses to the north, granaries to the south, market courts to the east, each point burning a different scent. Cinnamon rises where crossings should be kind. Myrrh marks patience. Cardamom marks generosity. Cedar speaks of keeping. The queen walks the map the way sailors walk a deck before a voyage. Spice trader Dima tends the braziers, adjusting coals so the plumes drift and meet without scolding each other. See, she murmurs, how the cardamom finds myrrh, how generosity pairs with patience. The envoy tips his head back and closes his eyes. He can navigate with his nose if all lamps fail. Children lie on mats and trace smoke lines with fingers. Elders nod, remembering the night skies of their youth. The court astronomer draws a chalk line around the map so tomorrow's feet can revisit it even when smoke is gone. This is the city's star chart for a season, a constellation of courtesies. When the last coal dims, the queen pinches it with wetted fingers and smiles at the soft hiss. "Good night, Roots," she says. You experience the rare sensation of a place choosing its weather. Tonight, the forecast is kindness. In the fig grove, a granite bench remembers more conversations than any scribe. Elders gather with the steady caution of people who know words can bruise even when they mean to bless. The queen sits at the bench's middle, leaving room on both sides so disagreements have somewhere to sit that isn't a lap. Bread tokens, amber beads, and a lion head bracelet lie on the stone, agenda items you can touch. One elder worries about too many gifts breeding laziness. Another counters with a story of a hinge that prevented a fight. The queen listens until both have said the second thing they came to say. The envoy offers a modest statistic from his ebony boards. Disputes have fallen since the bowl began to sing. He sets a quill down and does not pick it up again. This is a day for mouths and hands, not pens. A child brings water and becomes an unplanned witness. The elders lower their voices, and something in the talk sweetens. They decide the new policy will be to review gifts like wells, cleaned regularly, guarded lightly, and never privatized. The bench accepts a final tap from the queen's knuckles, as if sealed. Shade thickens. You feel yourself agree, though no one asked you to. The goldsmith sets the blue shard from Napata into a circlet of plain gold, flanked by hammered lotus petals that catch light without boasting. Not a war crown, he says, a remembering crown. The queen tries it on, surprised that it weighs less than some thoughts. The circlet's inner band is lined with woven flax from the House of Weavers, the selvage that forgives. When she steps into the hall, people do not cheer. They breathe. The envoy bows, noticing the shard sits exactly where her pulse touches metal. This crown will be worn at treaty renewals, at oath meals, at the opening of lamp schools, places where power's voice prefers a whisper. The rival chief arrives to witness, feather cloak folded over his arm, and nods once, as if a stone moved a finger width and made the road smoother. Children are allowed to touch the crown's outer petals, learning that gold does not bite. The goldsmith demonstrates how to rest it in a cedar box, lined with soft sand, so its memory stays calm. The queen looks into a bronze mirror and sees not herself, but the space her gentleness makes around her. You feel the room's shoulders lower. A coronet can be a lullaby if it chooses the right song. On mats, in the cool court, palm leaves are stitched into long, flexible pages, the kind that curl and then relax like a cat finding the warm place. The scribe writes in Meroitic along the ribs, ink dark as wet earth. This is no stiff papyrus. This is a treaty that can be rolled into a sleeve and carried through a market without scraping anyone's elbows. Clauses read as if composed by river. Patrols follow bowl times. Ferries honour amber nights for tired workers. Granary keys open for hunger and close for greed. Scent routes continue until rains say otherwise. The palm leaf copy itself is a valid pass-through checkpoints. The queen signs with the lotus seal. The envoy countersigns with the amber ring pressed into a wax dot the colour of patient honey. Children carry duplicate leaves to watch posts and temples, because when small hands deliver law, big hands open. A priest ties one copy to a pylon with blue thread. A merchant tucks another above his door lintel, so his customers breathe easier before they know why. Borders shift a thumb's width in the mind first. The ground follows when it has finished its nap. You hear the leaves whisper when rolled. A hush that means yes. Dawn gathers, and the city wakes to the gentle sort of thunder. Hooves on packed paths, oars tapping tholes, bowls sounding once and then not again. Couriers move like commas, pausing thoughts rather than ending them. A bread token slips into a ferryman's palm. A lion head bracelet gleams on a warden's wrist. A mirror catches a beard and shortens a quarrel. A sachet of cinnamon turns a watchman's frown into a memory. The queen walks the quay with the envoy at her side. Neither speaks for a long stretch because the treaty is speaking. Through ropes that don't burn hands. Through pathcloth that teaches a lane to forgive. Through a granite bench that cools arguments before they can scald. The rival chief's men carry grain not like spoils but like rain promised long ago and finally arrived. Children launch reed boats in basins and shout softly as if noise might bruise the morning. A giraffe blinks at the boatwomen and decides they are tall enough in spirit. The copper bowl at Philae hums precisely, and two barges stagger their landings with a politeness that could be bottled and sold as relief. The queen closes her hand around the palm leaf copy tucked at her waist. It warms against flax, like a living thing. Quiet has its own thunder, and you can hear it now. The sound of things going right with no one needing to clap. The envoy turns and says only, "Bread before orders." And the queen nods, as if he had recited poetry. When the sun clears the pylons, the river lifts its shoulder, accepts the day, and carries its gifts downstream. Your breath has learned the city's pace. Keep it. We have returned slowly to the riverbank where our first footsteps began, and the water is one long breath, in and out, a patient animal settled by good hands. The gifts have gone to their households, bracelets to wrists that will lift oars and cradle infants, mirrors to faces that will choose kindness before pride, bread tokens to palms that have measured storms. And the city has learned the gentle weight of them. There is nothing left to prove to the night. It understands. Let the images loosen, as a knot loosens when it meets warm water. The pelican cloaks hang quiet on their pegs. The copper bowl rests on its stone. The palm leaf treaty curls upon itself like a sleeping reed. Columns fade to pale silhouettes, then to lines, then to a suggestion. A giraffe folds its legs and becomes part of the dusk. A rope, wax smooth, remembers only the shape of safety. A cup from mixed clay holds the last coolness of evening and no longer needs a mouth. If your mind wanders, let it wander down the lamplit lane beneath the shade sail, along the pathcloth's forgiving edge, across the granite bench that has nothing urgent to say. Hear the bowl strike once, far away, a low river of sound that finds your ribs and slows them to a kinder tide. Feel a bead of amber warming in your palm, sun stored for a leaner hour and happy to share. The queens of Nubia sleep now, lotus crowns set on cedar, reed pens tucked into quiet baskets, their ledgers closed like gentle eyelids. Peace moves without marching, gift by gift, breath by breath, along a river that chooses to keep its temper. Rest with it. I will leave one lamp for you, shaded and soft, until even its flame grows drowsy and forgets its name. Close your eyes. The water will keep the watch.